Okay, what is going on, everybody?
What's happening, y'all?
We're just checking real quick this tech because as we have been practicing with this new software, we're just trying to improve it each time.
Yeah,
Is good?
that sounds good.
Okay, so let me go ahead and bring IG in. The only place that this will remain will be here in this group. So, oh, it looks like there's a tech issue over here. So that's fine. I'm gonna start this over. But we are live right here.
Yeah, so Facebook, those of you who are joining us here, we are,
Happy.
yeah,
I was gonna say happy Tuesday. That's it.
happy Tuesday. All
Go
right.
ahead, as you were.
As we're getting stuff together here, set up for you guys, we're excited to come in here and share some things with you because, yeah, sometimes you have to not let things go by without it being mentioned and talked about. Hey, Shawnee, what's up? What's up?
Team
Good to see you in here.
Estridge in the house. Okay, so we have
As we're pulling in our IG
some.
fam here. What's up, IG?
What's going on? Everybody, everybody,
Whole
everybody,
world,
everybody,
everybody.
everywhere, everybody, everywhere. So we have some thing that we were not planning on talking about because it was not brought to our attention. And then when this whole divorce situation of the Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates, I'm sure you probably have heard of it by now. Um, if not, yes, there's lots to say, lots to pray about, but there's also many lessons that's wrapped up in this for marriedpreneurs.
Yeah, and let me just say this.
Mm.
Listen, the goal with this live foremost is one to remain sensitive to the fact that we're talking about real people,
Yes.
a real family,
Yes.
a real marriage, and so
Yes.
by no means do we want to trivialize or speak in a way that would be insensitive. That being said, obviously we don't know all the details surrounding the situation. All we know is what anybody else knows, and that would be whatever came across the wire. So,
Yes.
but with that being said, there are some universal truths, at least at a very high level, that we can definitely talk about as it pertains to being marriedpreneurs, as they are probably some of the most famed, notable marriedpreneurs. And so there are some overarching truths that we can definitely examine in a very universal way, that we know, that we're confident, that will be very, very helpful to even you as marriedpreneurs. And so that's foremost why we're doing this live, is to really bring that value.
And for those of you who don't know us, or maybe this is your first time, because we are streaming on a couple different platforms, we want to first introduce ourselves before we dive into these, I would say, very rich lessons that we're going to share.
Absolutely. No pun intended. Yeah. Yep. So I'm Noel Buckley.
And I'm Sway Buckley.
Yep. And we are marriedpreneurlife.com. Yep. And we help mission minded married entrepreneurs, those who want to get more clarity, generate more income, but above all of that, leave a lasting impact.
Yes, and our goal is to be in here every Tuesday, as long as we're not on a plane somewhere traveling, and available around 5:30 EST to come and share marriedpreneur insights. And of course, today it's very much based on a current event. We don't normally do current events in this way, but we just knew, like, you know what, we don't want to like not mention this because it impacts all of like our community, the how we think about marriage, not that it changes it, but also how we think about, like, man, how could that even happen, right? But it's so much deeper than that, and we just wanted to bring some truths and some lessons that would, I believe, would help us as we are all growing on this journey of marriedpreneurship, and of course keeping them lifted up too, like.
Absolutely. Again, we're talking about real people.
We're talking about real people. So with that being said, though, just real quick, want to make sure that you all, those of you who don't know, as marriedpreneurs, there are three types of marriedpreneurs. They're the indiepreneurs, those couples who are working two individual or building individual businesses, the spousalpreneurs, or one spouse is building the business and the other one is working the 9 to 5. And then there is the couplepreneurs, where you're building the business together. You can be a combination of those, or you may just be one focused in one area, or you may be like transitioning with. I'm not going to go into the gate. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what we're here to talk about today is making sure that, number one, you know where you are. If you're indie, spouse, or couplepreneurs, it doesn't matter. You're definitely in the right place, for sure, for sure. And our goal is to help marriedpreneurs sync high level systems with laser clear strategy to build out that big God vision that's inside your hearts and build out a structure that is sustainable and to do that peaceably and profitably. And with that being said, those of you who know about the Marriedpreneur Life podcast, this week we are celebrating, or last week we started celebrating 200 episodes. So we want to
200.
let you all know, if you hadn't heard, go ahead and drop that.
Yay
What do
for
you call it?
consistency.
Yeah, what do you call it when you somebody's plug?
Yep.
Quick plug on that. The latest episode is about the 20 life lessons that we've learned by being consistent. 200 episodes. That may not seem like a lot to some people, but let me tell you.
If you listen, if you're a podcaster, you know what kind of work is involved.
And it's a lot with one person. So you get like both of us together trying to get our schedules, going through our go-throughs. We have, different things, or some days, you just don't feel like doing it. Some days you're like, do we have the time to do it? Do we have the energy to do it? What are we going to do? What is the content going to be? There's all these things that go on, like double that when you have more than one person that is like that's behind the scenes. So we're excited about that. And there's so many rich lessons though that we've learned over these last 200 episodes. And we want to share those with you all, whether you're podcasting or not. Life lessons or life lessons or life lessons. And why go through a life lesson? Like, why try to figure it out on your own if you can like learn lessons from somebody else, right? So this is why we're sharing that there. So we hope that's helpful for you all. You can check it out, Marriedpreneur Life podcast, on your favorite podcasting platform. Yes. And before we head on over to these 5 lessons that we want to share with you as well, we want to make sure that those of you, marriedpreneurs, we need systems, right? And we're talking about systems even through the situation that we're talking about today with this divorce. But with that being said, too, sometimes I hear a lot. I talk a lot on IG, on social. So I hear a lot about the questions and like, okay, where do we start? And I'm so frustrated with this. I'm trying to figure out like how to get on a rhythm, how to get our own pace down so we can build in sync and do that powerfully together. So many people, so many marriedpreneurs procrastinate and they end up sabotaging the thing that they're called to do because they sit on it and they think that everything has to be at a certain place. It has to be ready, whatever that is. That's a lie, but we're not talking about that today. With that being said, we want to make sure that you all can walk away with some real resources. So we've created a free legacy builder. We call that the Marriedpreneur Checklist, and you can get that over at marriedpreneurlife.com. It's the link in the bio for those of you who are on IG. It's our legacy builder, and it's really there as a resource to help you all as marriedpreneurs, whether you're indie, spousal, or couplepreneurs, to really build together and to do that powerfully in sync. Also, we have a special something coming up for those of you who are marriage coaches. Those of you who are helping other married people thrive in their marriages, stay tuned. And you are looking to help more people. You're looking for more couples. You're looking to get your rhythm down. We got something for you. What you about to say?
No, I was
like, he was like pointing. And I was like, what happened? Hey, fam.
When he plays the sax, I was pointing at you, sis.
Yes, I was pointing at you. I was like, what
I was saying,
pointing?
I see you.
Oh, I didn't catch that sign language. I was just like, what? He's pointing. I'm like, oh, they can't hear. So with that being said, what was I saying? Okay, marriage coaches, stay tuned. We have something special specifically for you coming up. We've worked with a lot of marriage coaches over the years, and we were kind of hesitant to say, should we just do something specifically for them? But I realized it's a real need. It's a real need. And in light of what we're talking about today, we want to help you all. We're not marriage coaches, but we want to help marriage coaches help marriages and make sure they have the systems, the business systems in place to actually scale. So we're going to be sharing some great information with you all soon coming up. You can go to the website. There's a little sneak peek there with the upcoming challenge, but more details with that coming soon. Now, let's get into this meat, shall we?
Let's do it. All right. So we are talking about bringing to you guys the 5 overlooked systems for really building marriage and biz, especially for obviously married entrepreneurs. And when we say overlooked, we literally mean overlooked. It's not to say that no one has never done them or hasn't ever done them, but the lack of consistency in doing them is really what's problematic. And so what happens is that they become overlooked because one or two reasons. Sometimes when we're building, we tend to sort of relegate systems to a phase. like, okay, that was for that phase. And
Mm.
so maybe we did it when we first started. So we
Yeah.
check that box and we no longer have to do it. And
Mhm.
when we do that, we are overlooking those systems. And so we want to bring to you guys 5 overlooked systems by married entrepreneurs.
Write
The
this down.
Yes.
This is going to remain only and solely in our free marriage plus entrepreneurship Facebook community. So if you're not there and you're on IG, you can stay there and we can talk here. But if you want to see this replay, if you're coming in late, listen, you want to get all these goods. That's the special sauce right here, one of them anyway, inside of our Facebook group. And those of you who are on our Facebook page and you may be seeing just a part of this, you want to say, wait, what was that? Let me go back. Let me tell my spouse to come and watch this with me because it's going to be that good. Come inside the group. Big old family here. It's a safe place. We'll be sharing tons of resources for you all throughout the month. And we're really excited about that. So that's just another little plug right there. So
let's get into this.
Shawnee has her pen and notebook ready. You already know.
Here's what we're going to do, home team. We're going to
Yes.
take these 5 in ascending order, right? So we're going to start really foundational, and then we're just going to build one after the other. So let's get into the first one. The first overlooked system is evaluating evergreen priorities.
And did you say these systems are evaluations?
Yes, these systems are evaluations. So all of them are going to start off with the word evaluate. All right. Yes, thank you. So the first is evaluating evergreen priorities. Now, I'm assuming you know what we mean when we say evergreen, but just in case, we're talking about ongoing, continuous, without stop. Okay. So these are always remaining evergreen. So it's so important as married entrepreneurs that first we establish what are our priorities. You can even use as a synonym values. Okay. And what happens is we have to say, okay, come what may, no matter how successful we are, no matter how much favor we experience in whatever and all that we're building, we recognize that these priorities are evergreen, non-stop. And so it's talking about what's our marriage priorities and what are our business priorities as married entrepreneurs. And this is going to remain going forward.
And something I was just going to read a quick little note from the Gates regarding their announcement about their divorce that I think is very it's interesting. Of course, it's definitely sad, but this right here system that we're talking about is the very thing that adds as a buffer for your marriage, as well as making sure that your business is still going to continue to grow and to flow, making sure those priorities are in place. So this is what I'm reading from the business section of CNN. This is a statement that they gave. We continue to share a belief in that mission as far as them leading productive lives, and we'll continue our work together at the foundation. But so they're going to continue to work together, but we no longer believe we can grow together as a couple in this next phase of our lives. So they're saying that they know that they can work together at the foundation, they can continue to build a business, but they can no longer grow together. They can no longer grow together in the next phase of our lives. Like this, that's the most, I would say, devastating statement of it all, because it's like that's where the priorities are switched.
Yes. And here's the reason why establishing and evaluating those marriage and business priorities are important is because when you do that as marriedpreneurs, the very first thing you're going to do is determine which one is the greater priority. And never as marriedpreneurs should the business, whatever the business priorities are, ever become more of a priority than the marriage itself.
Yes, absolutely. So evergreen priorities, you can write that in the comments. That's the number one thing. Number one is evaluate just evergreen priorities. And the second one.
The second one is transitions, evaluating transitions. Now, here's what we know without knowing any details. All life is about a series of transitions. Two lives together becoming one, married entrepreneurs, and then endeavoring in whatever way that is with business, there's always going to be business transitions. There's
Mm.
always going to be family and marital transitions.
Yep.
And so, how we navigate those transitions ought to be anchored by, um, uh, um, um, steered by those priorities that we established,
Mm.
because transitions will often challenge whatever priorities you have.
Mm.
And even if you don't think you have priorities, you do, even if you never actually
Yeah.
talked about them.
And the transitions really, I would say, is the most vulnerable place. It is the most vulnerable place you can be because you're not necessarily
Here,
where you were,
but you're not
necessarily
necessarily
where you're going. You're
exactly.
like in this in between space. And then that stuff can mess with your head if you don't have these systems in place, which is really going to be protecting the mindset and the heart set.
Absolutely. And I just want to say this real quick, because when you're in that vulnerable state of transitions,
Mhm.
the thing that tends to want to steer you is
Mm.
emotions.
Yeah. Ooh.
And the purpose of first
Mm.
evaluating those priorities and those values
Mm.
are they give a grounding, an anchor
Yeah.
that emotions can never give.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
that's really critical. So the first one is evaluating evergreen priorities. The second one is evaluating transitions.
Yes.
And then the third one is
So right, transitions. That's number two. Number two is transitions. So there are
right.
people coming in late. They can go through the comments. We'll just say go through the
Yep.
comments. There you go.
The third one is boundaries.
Oh, she said, could you give examples of transitions? We have a
Sure.
question.
Examples of transitions, say in
Mhm.
business, could be a new launch. It could be a new acquisition.
Launch season is always a type of a transition. Especially if it's a new thing and it's a more of an intense season within the marriage, within the business, because you're like all hands on deck, and there's a deadline you're working to get to, and you're putting all this new effort into this thing, which is like another, people call it a baby, it's like your other child, where you're like, this is the business. And so we're preparing to launch when so much goes into that. Well, we all know that we are self-contained. um we have a level of, I would say, we're capped at our energy that we have, we're capped at our resources, and that I say is self-contained in the sense that we cannot expand on that. So it's really a matter of like, well, how do we how do we use what we have? And if we're using more of what we normally use on the business, then there's going to be some other areas that will be lacking during this season, and that's normal. But what happens during that normal phase, if we're not um, proactive to get in front of this, we know a transition is coming, we know we're about to launch this new business or this new product or this new course or this new whatever, it's a whole nother level that is of attention that is required from us. But if we only have a certain amount of attention and the majority of it is going to this thing that we're building, then we know we're in it's a more vulnerable place, let's just say, in the marriage. And that's okay. But being prepared for that is what we're talking about. Okay, so what are we going to do? What is like off limits, right? What is off limits? Are we going to still do our date nights? Or are we saying, okay, well, we're going to skip date nights now, but we're going to do it again on this date? Or like, what are the things that are off limits? Are we going to make sure that we have our, we're going to go to bed together each night? Or because after a certain amount of, time, days, weeks of not going to bed together, not like talking throughout the day or having those moments of heartfelt conversation. We mentioned this before. It's easy, not in this live, but we've talked about the red flags that marriedpreneurs deal with, either cellmates, roommates, or running mates. And you start to turn into all three of those, regardless of your marriedpreneur type, because you're not talking, you're not building together. I thought it was very interesting what the Gates quoted when they said that they plan to continue to work together, but they no longer believe that they can grow together as a couple in this next phase of our lives. And so that's the thing you really want to protect, Shawnee, if that makes sense, is in the transitions, that you're still growing, not just as individuals or as business owners, but you're actually growing together. Because if you're not growing together, you're automatically by default growing apart.
Yeah, let me add a couple of more to your question, Shani, that I think are real world, along with that I think are real world that we would all be facing at some point. Changes in health, that's a transition.
Yeah.
Changes in roles or responsibilities. Maybe you've got a family member coming to live with you all, and that may impact how much time you can devote to the business as you're building. Changes with children. Maybe your
Yeah.
children are going from one age and stage to
Mhm.
another age and stage, and now they
Mhm.
require something a little different as a parent.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be also change in income and revenue.
Mhm.
Sometimes when income increases, you would be amazed how that causes transition in in the lives of married entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
Maybe it could be a dip in revenue and incomes.
Mm.
All of that uh,
All
can definitely
transitions.
impact, and those are transitions. Yep.
Yeah, that's
So
good stuff.
now let's go to the
Number three.
third. Yes, boundaries. Evaluating boundaries. Now,
Boundaries.
here's
Good.
what's interesting about boundaries. I'm going to go to a real I'm not going to say complex, but a subtle way that boundaries can change. I'll give you a classic example because maybe you think, okay, how can boundaries change? If you're adding a new team member
Mm.
to the business
Mm-hmm.
and you two are working together somehow, that now causes for an evaluation of boundaries. It could be
Mm.
boundaries on when and how you communicate with that new team member in terms of times of day, modes and methods. Maybe it's, hey, you can email me overnight during family time, but don't text me
Mm.
or call me overnight during family time.
Mm.
Those little subtleties can
Mm.
definitely have an impact because here's how it can happen. One of you can say, you know what? I'm excited about us building this business together, but I've, in my mind, established boundaries that after a certain hour or after a certain hour at the end of the week, I'm going to sort of distance myself from the business so I can
Mm.
commit more of my time to my wife and to our family.
Mm.
But if she, say, is taking team calls, team member texts, team member voxes,
Mm.
and we're not really clear as to what those boundaries are because we just say added a new person, or maybe we
Mm.
transitioned off another team member.
Yeah.
Now, because we didn't evaluate through that
Mm.
transition, she's doing something that makes me feel like I'm not the priority and the business is, or vice versa. So again, each one of these is connected to the other. So when you
Mm.
talk about boundaries, boundaries get reset, reestablished as we go through transitions.
That's good. Yeah. So number three is boundaries. You can put that in the comments right there. I think
Yep,
that's going to be helpful to many. Many.
absolutely. Fourth,
Mm-hmm.
now this is this is really key here. Fourth, evaluating tools. You can just write tools versus goals.
Tools
Tools versus
versus
goals.
goals.
Now, why those two together? Why tools versus goals?
Mm.
Because it is natural, it is easy, it is subtle for us to confuse as we're building together, building out this legacy together.
Mm.
Hey, which one is a tool and which one
Mm.
is a goal?
Yeah.
I'm going to go right for the easy.
Mm.
If we look at money
Mm.
as the goal rather than a tool
Ooh.
used to achieve a goal,
Ooh.
then what happens is our priority, remember, is topsy-turvy, it's
Mm.
upside down, and now
Mm.
I'm running after revenues while she's running after
Mm.
the ultimate vision, the ultimate
Mm.
goal, let's say even impact
Mm.
and legacy, what we're going to leave behind
Mm.
to our family.
Mm.
But I'm over here being driven by revenue. So it's really important to distinguish, hey,
Mm.
is this a tool or is this a goal?
Mm. That's good, and that really requires consistent. I mean, consistent evaluation because it's a heart issue. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and it's so subtle. Drifting is subtle. You can start off with one way and saying this is what we want to do, and then you realize, oh, we can do this and this and this. And I think it's important to understand. Yes, these are some amazing freedoms and perks, if you will, benefits that come with entrepreneurship. There are many, right? But at the same time, it's so important to make sure that we don't get drunk off of the noise in these streets in these Instagram and Facebook and social media streets, that we remain true to who we are, who God has called for us to be, and knowing that there is a provision right there as we are, continuing with our messaging, continuing to impact, and absolutely that profitability will be there as we are building out our businesses. But just remembering that that in it of itself is not the end goal, because that's a sorry end goal.
Yeah, yeah,
That alone,
yeah.
that alone. That alone. Now
Yeah.
we know that there are freedoms that come with money. We're not saying not, but that alone.
But clearly having a bunch of it,
Don't mean
based on what we're talking about.
you can get all the buy all the counseling sessions you want with the amount of funds or money that you have, but is it
Yeah, because we're looking at a total of about 130 billion.
right? So I mean, how many counseling sessions do you need, right? Like how many you can just have them for life, but that's not even it, y'all. You know what I mean? That's not even it. So
Yeah.
I just think that's it's sobering is what it is. It's
Very,
sobering
very.
and it's a wake up call. I know we know these things and we're told these things and we know how to say these things, but then when you see something like this happen, and I think it's pretty massive. This is really on a global level,
Mhm.
right? Because there's so much that is being impacted by this union.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this as we go to the last one here, whether we're talking about 9-figure money or we're talking about 6-figure money or even 5-figure money, nobody is safe from not having these systems in place, which now leads us to the fifth and final challenges. Evaluating challenges. Evaluating challenges. Let me say this as we unpack challenges for just a second. Every transition is not a challenge, but every challenge is a transition. And so what happens is as we are evaluating we as married entrepreneurs are evaluating challenges, how we internalize, because everybody internalizes challenges a little different. How we internalize these challenges is another opportunity to say, hey, who are we? What have we committed ourselves to? What is our identity as one flesh, if you will, as a marriage, as a unit? Because challenges can cause us to sort of look very individualistically. Wow, I got that on the first try. And so what happens is it can cause a wedge in our relationship, because challenges are an opportunity to either take ownership or to cast blame.
Opportunity to take ownership or to cast blame. And these evaluations, I think it's important for us to say before we wrap this up. And thank you all so much for putting these in the comments as well on all the platforms. Y'all are dropping it in there. So thank you for that. So people can read it and see it. And we'll do a one last sweep before we shut it down. But these evaluations are conversations. These are conversations that are heartfelt conversations. These are you mentioned it earlier. I'll let you say that part because I don't want to.
Yeah. So as we were thinking through this, what makes these systems systematic? What qualifies them to be systematic? Well, here's what every system has, no matter what kind of system it is. Every system has a schedule or frequency, and it has substance, meaning an objective. So it's a when we do it and why we do it aspect to every system. And so your computer has a systematic time of updating and a reason for the updating. It's the same thing with us as we work through these 5 overlooked systems. We want to have a schedule and we want to have a substance, meaning an objective to why we do it.
So this is you all's assignment for today. This is it. I think this is a big wake-up call for everybody, right? No one is above going through challenges, and we all go through challenges in our marriage, and it's clear that it doesn't matter the amount of money that we have that would say we are above having challenges. That just doesn't, that's not true. So with that being said, we want to leave you with something to work on together, and that is to go ahead and schedule, right? You write these down. Let's do one quick sweep and then go ahead and schedule when you're going to have these talks. And it's just, it doesn't have to be a long drawn out talk. If it requires it, then sure, because it's important. But as you all do it, knowing that, okay, let's just talk through this. What are these? Let's go through the first one. What are our evergreen priorities? Like, what are the priorities that are going to be they will remain consistent regardless? Like, what are they for us? Not for us individually, but for us as, corporately as one. Okay, that's our first one. And that's just a simple question in that conversation, a prompt to ask. And then, are we in what kind of transition? Not are we in a transition, because I believe we're always in some type of transition if we're really growing and moving forward. So what kind of transitions are we in right now? Number one, just being aware. It's necessary to be aware, because awareness is the first step to making any type of real change.
That's right.
And if we're not aware about self-aware and us aware about what's going on in us, and then what is happening, like what we're moving towards, then we were not even going to talk about it. We just go through it. It hits us, and then we're like, whoa, what just happened? So just being aware of the transitions. That's the second one. The third one, what are the boundaries that we need to make sure that we have in place right now? What are these boundaries? What types of changes are happening in the transitions that boundaries are being challenged? What type of boundaries that we're saying, okay, we're going to move this boundary, we're going to change it a bit, or no, we are this boundary, this is staying right here. We have put the line in the sand and we're not crossing it. Like, this is what it is. Let all the people know, let the aunties know, let the uncles know, let the family know, let everybody know that this is our line in the sand.
Let the kids know.
Let the kids know, right? This is our line in the sand and this is our boundary. And y'all, it can be so challenging, especially when you yourself want to go on the other side of that line. Like, what happens when you want to break that boundary? It's not just about them, but what happens when you want to do it? What happens when you're just like, well, if I could just send this one more email off, if I could just go ahead and respond to them, because if I don't respond, then the whole world is gonna, just blow up, right? Like, that's not the case, right? But sometimes we can feel that way because we feel like maybe it not be the world, but it's our world. Right. But just being very clear about what those boundaries are for not just them, but for ourselves as well, and honoring them, not just for us personally, but for us collectively. That's important too. So that's boundaries number 3. And then number 4, the question is, so what type of systems or evaluating do we need to do right now concerning our tools versus goals? Have we gotten them confused? Are we clear about the distinction between the tools that we use, as you gave an example, money,
to accomplish
what that goal,
mm-hmm.
and understanding, okay, what are the goals? Now, there are also money goals, but then also money being a tool, what is that tool for, right? Like, what is it that we're going to use that for? Just being very clear about that and having these ongoing conversations, because individually we go throughout the day, even if we are working together, we are growing individually. And if we don't catch each other up and update each other on how we are changing and the things that are happening, if we don't keep each other abreast to who we are today, we will look up and be like, oh, I'm not the same person. You're not the same person. You're not the person I married, right? And then that's a whole nother conversation.
And by the way, none of us are the people we married.
And you're not going to be. We're not. That's the point. Like, right. We're always growing, which is why these systems are important. Exactly. That brings us full circle. Okay, so that's number 4, and then number 5. What type of challenges are we in right now, and what type of challenges, I would say this is bonus, do we foresee? What do we foresee coming? What, having the vision to see down the road? Proverbs talks about the wise person sees danger down the road, and what do? They get out the way, but the fool stays in the middle of the road and they get overtaken by the trouble, right? So we want to make sure that we are wise. We are wise marriedpreneurs. We are wise legacy builders, and we know what we need to do. We have these conversations and we're evaluating and we're using situations, even other people's situations, even as unfortunate as this divorce, as a learning tool. And as we pray for them, we pray for us. And we say, nobody is above the struggle of anything, that we don't know what type of challenges are awaiting us, but making sure that we are doing what we need to do to maintain us.
That's right.
Maintain and thrive, not just maintain in that sense, but anything else?
That's it.
Hey, Chastity. Hey, sis. So, okay, I think that's it for today, guys. So we'll be back next Tuesday.
Yep.
With some more. We were not planning on talking about this today, but such is life, and I think it's important, and I think hopefully this has been valuable. Let us know in the comments if this has been helpful for you all. Hopefully you've taken some notes. As we mentioned earlier, some of you may be new on Facebook and IG as well. If you missed any of these at all, we will have the replay over in our Facebook group, which is Marriage Plus Entrepreneurship. You can come and take all the notes, get all that good stuff. Well, we have other great stuff coming up over there, as well as if you're a marriage coach, we have some great things coming up for you all as well. Some trainings to help you all help more marriages as you all are building out the legacy and doing the thing that God has placed on your heart. And lastly, for those of you who were needing more systems in place, we mentioned at the beginning that we have a legacy building tool, a free resource. It is our Marriedpreneur Checklist, 2021 Marriedpreneur Checklist. So you can go ahead and download that, go through that together as marriedpreneurs. get your checklist together for the year. We're already moving forward in it. So if you don't have it by now, you can still go get that over at marriedpreneurlife.com.
All right. You
Oh,
guys have
thank
been amazing today. It's been
you.
a pleasure to be here. We about to be out. Blessings and best to you guys. Praying for your marriages, praying for your business.
Yes.
Yep.
Praying. All right. So we look forward to seeing y'all next Tuesday, same time, same place. All right.